When you make up your mind to be defined by a vision of the future, you're going to change your energy. And when you change your energy, you're going to change your life. We're creatures of habit. People get locked into a routine. When they're doing the routine, they're not present. It means that you got to change it up. People have to embody who they want to become. Walk as that person, breathe as that person, and become the stars of their own movies. I challenge people to get beyond themselves. When you forget about everything that's known, you're moving into a very creative process. You're placing your attention and energy in that field of possibilities. That's where the magic happens. I'm very hopeful that we become a species of human beings connected to the earth, so creative, so overjoyful. We're wired to give. We're the happiest when we're taking care of one another, and that's what community is about.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
It's time for you to man up, to once and for all tell your mind who the fuck is boss. I need a fucking answer. What's it gonna be? I don't know what it is about this fucking sport, but it attracts people that really need to do deep work on themselves.
I failed in this city. All these bad memories. I never really felt like I gave a fuck about me or my life. I almost killed myself, like...
Think about something that is gonna drive you when it really hurts. Some kind of demon you wanna fight.
This is not Pussy Man, this is Iron Man. Under pressure reveals true character. What are you gonna do? You gonna be in Chattanooga, May 20th or what?
Dr. Joe Dispenza is back on London Real, and he's here to tell you if you can change your energy, you can actually change your life. And I love this perspective that he always brings, is that you should be able to practice abundance when you don't have things. You should be able to be grateful when you're not necessarily happy with what you have. And by projecting this energy outward, you can affect your entire future. I always get inspired when Joe comes here. He says you can be most creative when you stop thinking about yourself and you get out of these daily routines and these daily habits that we have where we tell ourselves who we are. It's just this story that we repeat over and over again. If you can get out of that, I think you can take your life to the next level. And Joe really talked about what he does on his retreats, the action he gets people to take over 7 days, and some of the great stories and big breakthroughs. I know you're going to love this episode with Joe. He's never talked about this stuff before, so lock in for one of the best episodes of London Real. And inside the world headquarters, we're getting ready to launch our Speak to Inspire course. It's 6 weeks where I teach you how to communicate and persuade others. This is a skill that most people forget about, but my TED Talk that went viral with over 300,000 people watching it showed me the power of communication. And this is an online accountability course. It's what we do inside the Academy. 100 people from around the world. We go through it as a boot camp, and it's closing now, so check that out. But don't worry, the Business Accelerator is coming after that, and all sorts of other cool things we're doing inside the Academy. Here's a little bit more about what we do.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. Joe Dispenza, the New York Times bestselling author, international lecturer, researcher, and educator. You focus on the intersection of neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics, driven by the conviction that each one of us has the potential for greatness. You specialize in teaching people to rewire their brains and recondition their bodies to make lasting changes. Dr. Joe, welcome back to London Real.
Happy to be with you, Brian.
It's great having you back. You know, you're no stranger to Europe. I mean, you've been back here in the last 5 or 6 months. Why do you keep coming back to this continent, and what brings you over here? Because you have a lot of interests around here, right?
I guess my whole view all along is, and principle that I live by, is I go where I'm invited. And when they stop inviting me, I think it's time to do something else. But strong interest in Europe, I think, started at the turn of the millennium when you started seeing people really breaking away from traditional religion and cultural ways. And I think people are really searching for something else. So I think Europe is a very practical place, and we love coming because we have a great audience, and people are interested in not just learning the information, but also applying the information. And when you start applying it, then you start experiencing the truth of the theory of the philosophy. So I think this is a time right now where people, not only want to know, they want to know how, and it's a practical approach, and we should be using this stuff to enhance our lives or to make changes. We love coming to Europe.
Yeah, it's funny, and we were just talking, I was recently in Bordeaux, and I went on a tour of one of the wineries, and the tour guide said, we're not much into innovation here. We kind of do these things we've done for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and yet they're starting to kind of open their minds to what's going on, whereas you might argue in the West, or maybe in America, it's constantly been a place of innovation. Mm-hmm. So it kind of reminds me of your stuff. Now this old school European culture is like, wait a second, there are some ideas here. And I know you go to Italy and Germany, and you must see, these societies that are kind of built on their past, now being open to some new ideas.
I think we're just at a great age right now. We're in an age of information. And in an age of information, I think ignorance is a choice. I mean, what makes this so beautiful at this current time is that you don't need an authority really to gain information. You don't need a rabbi or a priest. You don't need a teacher or a doctor. People can access information through technology. So there's this kind of globalization going on where you keep things that have worked traditionally, but I don't think things will ever be the same again. And because there's such a pace, a quickening that's going on, that more things are happening in a shorter amount of time, that people have to stay informed. And certainly when I walked out into an audience 10 years ago, very different than when I walk out today, because everybody has information, and I can start at any level, and people have enough understanding that they're ready for it. So I think globalization has been created because of information, and you're starting to see this merging of different cultures. You're starting to see, 10, 15 years ago, as an example, the Germans were so interested in the facts, the knowledge, the 7 functions of the hippocampus in order. And as a culture, the Italians were more into the experience. They didn't really need all that information. And now we're seeing just this kind of way that everybody, the Germans love the experience, the Italians love the knowledge, and now everybody's just kind of blending together. And I think that's a new healthy paradigm.
I was wondering if you could give us, as rough as you can, of a summary of what it might be like for me to come to one of your events. I know you've gone from the 2-day and the 4-day, and now you do these 7-day events because you found amazing success. And I know you've just had a big one in Cancun. You got one coming up in Toronto. You're back in London or in Brighton in a few months as well. And, I know you have different types of people that come to these events, but I'm just curious, kind of like for people that don't know you very well, what are the kind of things that they would learn from you or experience?
Wow, so I think people come to our events for a lot of different reasons. Some people come because they're faced with a health challenge. They've heard about somebody with a similar health challenge, or have read about somebody with a similar health challenge that went about making significant changes in how they think, how they act, and how they feel. And over a period of time, the disease went away, and without any exogenous substance. Other people come because they want to create a new life, a new job, a new career, a new opportunity. Some people come because they're chasing the mystical and they want to have those profound mystical experiences. And I think everybody comes for their own reasons. But what we're learning now is that in these 7-day events, and I'll talk about why we do those 7-day events in a minute, but there comes a point where people start experiencing a greater level of wholeness. And when you start seeing that kind of coherence that goes on in the brain and coherence that goes on in the heart, and we measure this, when you feel so whole and so complete that you're happy with yourself, and you probably will want less. And you're less reliant on anything outside of you to bring you joy. And I think that kind of is who we are innately. So people come for all kinds of reasons, and they think it's because they want wealth, or they want health, or they want a new relationship. But it's who they become in the process, because that's what you take with you. And so we were doing these 4.5-day advanced events, and what I noticed is right around the last day or so, people were having significant transformations. And I started realizing, God, if we had just 3 more days with them, what could we accomplish? So we started doing these 7-day events, and the events are an opportunity for people to retreat from their lives, to remove the constant stimulation in their external environment that reminds them of who they think they are as a personality, to separate themselves from the people they know and the places they go and the things that they do at the exact same time every day in that routine program. Long enough for me to remind them of what they already know, that they are the creator of their life. And so if you can combine a little neuroscience with a little quantum physics, with a little neuroendocrinology, with a little psychoneuroimmunology, a little bit of epigenetics, all of those new sciences really point the finger to what's possible. So people that come to the week-longs are people that are experienced in doing this work. We want them to be practicing at home because I'm going to stretch them outside of their comfort zone. And the first day is always the big day, because when you come, people have to get beyond themselves. And after looking at 8,500 brain scans, I now know without a doubt that you and I are at our absolute best when we get beyond ourselves. And there's a formula in helping people to do that. Now, when you forget about yourself, you're moving into a very creative process. You're not thinking about what you look like, you're not thinking about what you eat, you're not thinking about your past or all your problems or your pain, you're not thinking about your name. In fact, you dissociate from everything that's known for you, and that's the creative process, stepping into the unknown. So the first day, I challenge people to get beyond themselves, and so they'll learn, I'll remind them of some of the basics, and then we're going into a meditative process for different parts of the day, and they're working on taking their attention off their body, off the people in their life. Now think about this. the stronger the emotion that you feel to some problem or some condition in your life or some person in your life, the more you pay attention to that person or problem. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, in fact, you're giving your power away to a lot of the problems in your life because that's where your attention is. If you're in a routine of waking up every morning and running through the same behaviors that you did the day before, if you wake up in the morning and you have to think about your problems to feel the emotions that are connected to those memories of those problems are old circuits in your brain, and every problem has an emotion associated with it. If thoughts are the language of the brain and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel is your state of being, most people's entire state of being is in the past. So then once they're living in the familiar past, we can know by fact that they're going to be in a predictable future. So then how do you get a person then to lower the volume to those emotions so that they can begin to take their attention off the problems in their life, and it's their attention and anticipation of how they expect it to show up that keeps their observation from a quantum model, the reality being the same. So
I'm thinking the same things. I've got the same people in my life, so by definition I'm going to experience those same problems or that.
Yeah, and the best way to say it is that it's not your personality that's creating your personal reality. It's your personal reality that's creating your personality. You're at effect of your environment, and your environment is actually controlling your thoughts and feelings. So if you said to me, well, I'm angry today because of this person, I'm upset because of this problem, then what you're really saying, just from an objective standpoint, that person or that problem is actually controlling how I think and feel. Which means if I'm reacting to the conditions in my environment, then for the most part I'm a victim to my environment. But turning the battleship around, turning that model around, because how you think and how you feel should begin to produce an effect in your life if you were able to change it. So then people have to lay down the very thing that they've been using their entire life in the same way to get what they want for something greater to happen. So the first day is about overcoming ourselves. It's taking your attention off your environment, forgetting about your body and the emotions and pain and disease and whatever else, and get beyond that program of a predictable future and a familiar past, and get beyond the concept of linear time and fall into the present moment. And that formula then has a biological effect in the brain and body that we can actually anticipate, expect, predict when we see a person starting to overcome themselves. And after looking at enough brain scans, I saw then that people were able to get beyond themselves to move into that creative state. So
is that where creativity happens, when you separate yourself from yourself?
Well, think about it. Have you ever sat at your computer writing an article or reviewing something or studying, and you look up and it's 2.5 hours later and you have no idea where time went? You lost track of the space you were in and the predictable time of the next moment. And when you lose track of space and time, if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and you have no attention in this three-dimensional reality, then all of your attention is in a realm of thought, and we would call that the quantum. So now, you can't enter the quantum field as a somebody. You have to enter as a nobody. So when you begin to get beyond yourself, what is your environment made of? People, objects, things, places, well, your body in space and time. So when you take your attention off all of those elements, you're disinvesting your attention and energy out of this three-dimensional reality, and you're placing your attention and energy in that field of possibilities. Now, what's the relevance of that? Well, think about it. Most people are their bodies trying to heal their bodies. And most people are their personality trying to change some aspect of their personality. They're trying to create some new future event, but they're wrapped up in the routine and program of how they live their life in the same ways.
Sounds ridiculous when you put it that way.
But the truth is that we're all stuck in these programs, and they've lost their free will to a program because they run the same routine every single day. So
without knowing it.
Without knowing it. So then you need a crisis or a disease or a loss or a betrayal or a shock or something that you finally wake up, right? So our community of people when they understand that they have to get beyond themselves, because when they do, now they're ready to create. They're not thinking about what they look like. They're not thinking about what anybody else thinks about them. They're not thinking about how long it's going to take. They start getting beyond those elements that keep them restrained and attached to their past, present reality. So if you come to an event, the first day is about overcoming yourself. That first day, you start seeing people starting to break through. Once some people start to break through, it becomes very contagious.
Okay, and that's through meditation, physical
We
practices?
we use a lot of meditation. We do 4 types of meditation. We do a seated meditation, and our students can sit for extended periods of time because they forget that they have a body. Okay. And they're good at it. And we do standing and walking meditations. A picture 1,000 people on a beach, a beautiful beach, and everybody is starting off raising their energy and opening their heart, and then they begin to embody who they want to become. They start to walk as that person, they breathe as that person, they start to take it on, and they start embodying that energy. And they start changing the subtle programs of when you're unhappy or when you're beaten down by your environment, you have a certain posture, certain unconscious mannerisms. So we're retraining them so that when they get back into their life, they're going to walk as their future self. They're not going to walk as their old self. They're becoming it. And that becomes the new habit. And then we do a laying down meditation, and that's important because in those laying down meditations, we are after the mystical. So we want to catch them in that realm between half awake and half asleep, where that door, the portal of dreams opens up, where you have a lucid experience. And again, we now have demystified that process, and we can induce that state. So in a week-long event...
What's the 4th?
Oh, the 4th is a lying down meditation. So standing, sitting, walking, and laying down. Okay. And it's pretty fun because you see 1,000 people on the beach or in a park, and you're a person staying at the hotel, or you're just somebody who rides your bike in the park, and all of a sudden you see people just connecting, and everybody stays and watches. It's so beautiful. Sun rises. We start at 6 in the morning, and it's just sentient beings, really connecting. And so people make movies. We do these mind movies, and we teach them how to, instead of watching some ridiculous late-night fright commercial about your immune system getting weaker, or you need a flu shot, or you need to drink a certain beer, drive a certain car, to look a certain way, or to be loved or liked, and that's all programming, where you're relying on something outside of you to bring you some emotion or feeling. That we teach them how to become the stars of their own movies. And we induce a trance with their eyes open, and they understand the science behind trance. And when you're in trance, you're less likely to analyze. And what separates your conscious mind from your subconscious mind is your analytical mind. So as they move into trance, they slow their brain waves down, they stop analyzing, they increase their level of suggestibility. And suggestibility is your ability to accept, believe, and surrender to information without analyzing it. So go back to a late-night fright commercial where you're just sitting, staring at the TV. It's called programming for a reason. Your brain's in trance. You're in alpha or high-level theta. You're not analyzing. You're just sitting there, and all that information is going right into your subconscious, and it's recording it. So then when you start experiencing any of those symptoms, or you start feeling some lack or emptiness, your brain is naturally going to create the picture of what you associate as a reason or a way to get out of that emotion.
Is media one of the most dangerous things we put in our brain?
Oh my God. I mean, if you're watching television, don't watch anything that you don't want to experience, because you're programming yourself for a specific outcome. And it turns out that many of the commercials are actually programming you for the very thing they have the solution for, if you look at it from an objective standpoint. So I thought, why not get a group of people to go into trance and understand the science behind it? And then instead of looking at some frivolous commercial, why not be the star of their own future? And when they play a strong song, like a powerful song that motivates them, and they're watching scenes of them and their future, just like when you were, watching, driving down the car and hearing a song on the radio, and it reminds you of a time in your life, an associative memory. You're associating that song with some memories. From a biological standpoint, remembering your future is actually no different than remembering your past, and you can program your subconscious into that future. And so that helps people then to get clear on the future that they want to embrace, and it puts them in that right energetic or emotional state. So we use a lot of the mind movie technology. We teach them how to specifically create something out of nothing. We teach them how to connect to that unified field and to create from the field instead of from matter. And turns out the brain and the heart gets highly organized when we do this. And we've been doing this new thing in our week-long events, which has been really profound, and we've been teaching coherence healing. And we have witnessed some of the most incredible miracles, Brian, that I thought I would never see in my lifetime. You know, everything from cancer, tumors disappearing right during the event, people that have hearing difficulties hearing again, people with Parkinson's disease freed, people with crutches walking without crutches, people stepping out of wheelchairs, blind people seeing. I mean, we've seen, and I have to tell you, I was more surprised than anybody in witnessing this. But
what is coherence healing?
So our whole model that we use in our work is about creating brain and heart coherence. When there's a great communication between the brain and the heart, people are more aware, they're more healthy, they're more connected, they're more present, they're more kind, they're more loving, they're more caring. And so we teach people how to create this kind of brain and heart coherence. Well, the coherence healing we couldn't teach at the beginning of the week, because if a person is about ready to heal another person, you can't be thinking about the pain in your back, how long it's going to take, or if you're doing it right. You got to leave that on the beginning of the week. You got to get beyond that early on. So we do the coherence healings at the end of the week, and we call it the cage. So we take a person that has a health condition, they lay down, and we put 8 people around them in a cage, 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, at the head and at the feet. And we give them the science of understanding how it all works, because if you look at some of the research out of Yale University in the 40s, some really elegant researchers, they came across the understanding that most people think that it's matter that emits a field, but in actuality it's the field that creates matter. In other words, they started studying and understanding that certain rodents with certain propensities for certain cancers had a very specific electromagnetic signature in their field. And every single rodent that had that signature in their field had the type of uterine cancer. But there were certain rodents that had the signature in the field that didn't develop the cancer yet, but they ultimately developed the cancer. So it wasn't matter that emits a field, it's the field that creates matter. So the question is, if you can change the field, can you change matter? And so we give them the science and the understanding behind that, and then they raise their energy. They have to be in the state where they open their heart, because this is the center in which we give, and that center has to be activated, and it has to be coherent, and they have to be trained on how to do that. They have to be able to connect to that field of information, and then they have to get beyond themselves. And when they start creating very coherent energetic signatures by placing their hands in the field of the person laying there, they begin to produce very organized, more holistic patterns that begin to disorganize or create an unraveling of matter, and then you see this reorganization of matter go on. And I'm saying within minutes. So I've seen bodies shake uncontrollably. I've seen people arch their back where there's nothing touching the ground but the back of their head and their heels. This is energy. This is a very profound energy. I've seen people feel more love than they've ever felt in their entire life, and that's information that's being overlaid into the field. And so the more they are connected to that field, the faster amount of time it happens. So we're getting good at it.
Okay.
We're
and
getting
you're
really
surprised. That's what's always, fascinating to me, because you've been doing this for so long. How can it surprise you?
Well, because from a theoretical standpoint, it makes sense to me. But if you give people the proper instruction and you set up the conditions in the environment, I mean, and you start to witness people get their hearing back, and it happened in 15 minutes. You got to scratch your head, and you can't go back to business as usual. You just, the things that I've witnessed and still witness, we're still seeing these incredible changes that are taking place even after the event. You got to change your whole model of the way you view the world. So,
what do the scientists say when they try to get their heads around this? When you tell them this, what do they say?
Well, my scientist friends right now, they're really funny with
Your
me.
son's an engineer too, right?
Right, because I really, I honestly don't care anymore. I mean, I really don't care. I really don't care what people think.
Why?
Well, because I know that on some level we're making a difference in people's lives. So I don't...
What's a doctor for? To heal a patient. Doesn't matter the method.
Well, I don't even claim to know everything, but I'm interested in closing the gap between knowledge and experience. And I don't think if we wait for science to tell us it's okay to do this, we make it another religion, right? But if we go out and do it, and we record it, then science has to change their laws to meet up with what's possible. And so I'm surprised more than a lot of people many times, because it just, it shakes the present paradigm of my own personal conditioning, that of what I'm witnessing is happening, and these people are not monks, they're not priests, they're not holy people, they're not academics, they're common people, and that's the importance of all this. And this kind of healing, by the way, has been going on for thousands of years. There was herbs, there was ritual, and there was laying on of hands and energetic healing that was just part of what people did in many cultures. So
maybe we've gone too far down the science will fix it all route.
Well, treating it matter to matter, chemistry to chemistry, does work. It just takes time. So, but if you're starting to see these effects happening in no time, it's happening outside of time, like instantaneously, then that's a quantum phenomenon. So that's energy changing matter. Otherwise, if it's happening in no time, that's happening faster than the speed of light. So that's the realm of the quantum. So then, how much of people's day do they put on matter, their attention on matter? I would say for most people 100% of the time.
Very close to it.
If you get a group of people that yet they're taking all of their attention off of everything material and physical, and you can explain this invisible field of energy and information that exists beyond the space and time. There's no people there, there's no things there, there's no objects, there's no places, there's no planets, there's no light from the stars, there's no stars. It's an invisible field of nothing. But just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So then you can only experience that realm with your awareness. And when you become pure consciousness, you leave this three-dimensional reality behind. Now you can execute greater effects on the nature of reality, on the material world. So in other words then, in order for you to heal your body, you got to get beyond your body. In order for you to change something in your outer environment, you got to get beyond the memory and the emotions that keep you connected to the problem that exists in your outer world. And so then people start to figure this out, and you're having them every day paying attention to this field, keeping their awareness on it, staying present with it, becoming more aware of it, feeling it, moment after moment after moment, every single time they have an experience or they feel something. Experience lays down circuitry in their brain. So now they're laying down the hardware for them to experience that field even more the next time. And plasticity works where you have to stretch beyond the known. You have to stretch outside your comfort zone. So then as they start to interact with that field, with their awareness, not with their bodies, but with their awareness, the brain's tracking it neurologically. And so now they're putting the circuits in place for them to stay connected to the field. And then the side effect of that is they start producing greater effects on their life, because now they understand now what they're doing and why they're doing it. So we've seen all kinds of amazing things go on in these coherence healings, and I want to get better at it. I want our community to get really skilled at it, and they can work themselves up into this state. You can ask people that come to these events, the energy in the room is off the chart, and people were wired to give. You know, we're the happiest when we're taking care of one another, and that's what community is about. So we're starting to see this genuine energetic thing that's happening where people are just popping, they're just healing. And it's exciting to me because, as I said, I'm waking up in my dream. I mean, this is my dream and it's happening, and so many other people are waking up in that dream, and we're giving people hope, because even the most angry, unhappy, selfish person that's suffering because of some health condition, when they finally surrender, I've seen it happen. I've seen those people have a very significant change in a condition or a disease that medical science had no solution for. So how do you explain that, first of all? And second of all, if it's happening in real time to one person, or it's happening repeatedly, there's got to be some scientific model, because anything that's repeatable is science. So we're bridging on this whole new world here, a whole new realm. And then the last thing we're doing is, which is really super fun in our week-long events, is we're doing challenge activities. Now, why challenge activities? Well, we teach brain and heart coherence, really easy to do it in a closed environment, when there's music and the place is safe and everybody's sitting together and there's no threats or danger, and they practiced it with their eyes closed and they know they can concentrate and do it. But now, why not put those people in challenging conditions with their eyes open, where they would feel some emotion, like fear as an example, or a voice or a program saying, I can't do this. And now this is the time, right in that moment, where their body is going through a host of automatic reactions, and you're teaching them in that moment how to create brain and heart coherence. And if they can settle themselves down,
You're preparing them for the outside world.
they can go back into their life, and they can say, hey, this is nothing. You have no idea what I just did.
What kind of challenges are you doing?
Oh my goodness, I can't tell you because I want to ruin it, but I will tell you this. The one that we're doing in Toronto is outstanding. The one, I'm so excited about this one. I mean, we keep upping the scale, and we have people, these are courses where, they're physically challenged, and but it's not about your physical body or if you're in shape. It's about your will. It's about your heart. It's about your soul. People that, with Alzheimer's and rheumatoid arthritis and spinal cord injuries, where they have every excuse not to do it. And I'm telling you, they accomplish that feat, and boy, oh boy, they're no longer in the subconscious belief that they're handicapped, and now their progress, their acceleration moves very quickly. So we do these challenges.
And that handicap is the ultimate manifestation of what you're doing, because that is something they potentially manifested physically.
We're all handicapped.
Right.
We're all handicapped.
It's just those you can really see
Right.
the step change that happened, as opposed to if I figured something else out about my own construct about my life. That might take months to play out.
And plus, where would you wind up standing on a pole, as an example, 50 feet in the air?
That's one of the challenges.
And you have to stand up on a plate that's kind of wobbly, and then you have to turn around and jump. You can't tell me you're too old to do this. You can't tell me you're too sick to do this. You can't tell me you're too out of shape, too overweight, too underweight. You can't tell me you're not healthy. You can't tell me any of that stuff any longer, because I've seen all shapes and sizes do it. And so this community is being built where, instead of people competing and manipulating and backstabbing, you're seeing this community of cooperation and collaboration and built in love and encouragement. It's emotional. I mean, it's just witnessing somebody doing something like that. It gives you permission to do the same. And then we get people standing up on the stage and telling their story about how they overcame stage 4 cancer. Not one person, not 2 people, 3 people. People overcome depression, people overcome whatever it is. And they're telling their story to the audience. And it's undeniable, and you're listening, and they don't look like a movie star. They're not buffed or in shape or young and perfect or whatever. they're just a common person. As you're listening to their story, and it's not all glorious, and it's not all, movie theme. They took some hard bumps. They lost things. They got bankrupt. I mean, they've had their challenges, and they never missed a day of their meditation. You start looking at those people, and you start realizing that, wow, all the things that you thought that you were feeling sorry for yourself about, you can't. You just can't. So there's a 4-minute mile that's being broken in our community. We're piercing a veil, and that veil is so important because it's happening. Once we pierce it, it's in consciousness. It's in the field, which means it's more readily accessible. Great. But also, if you're witnessing it, miracles that you see that are so incredible. When you witness it, and you're talking to the person next to you about it, now it's in the consciousness of three-dimensional reality.
It means you can do the same thing.
A 4-minute mile, once it was broken,
right.
You know this. You're an athlete. I mean, everybody knew that they could do it.
Right.
So
it's just a limiting behavior.
Just a limiting belief. So
right.
We're seeing these people. I love it. I love what happens as a side effect of people, because once people understand it from a philosophical and theoretical standpoint, and then they can explain that to the person next to them. If they can't explain it, it's not wired in their brain. They got to be able to share and build a model and review it and fire and wire and repeat it and argue and analyze and think about it and get this kind of model in place that's represented neurologically. They're installing the hardware in their brain in preparation for the experience. So the more they understand it, the more they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, the more it makes sense to them. The how gets easier because they can assign meaning to what they're doing. So then when you set them up in the conditions and nothing's left to conjecture or superstition or dogma, they understand what they're doing and they get their behaviors to match their intentions, there's going to be a transformation. And so it's just like this amazing energy that happens by the second or third day. If it's a great group, and we've had so many great groups, it's just a landslide. It's just everybody, there's just a current that just starts pulling people down, and everybody goes. And so
and how do you keep people from regressing back to their old behaviors when they go home?
I'm on them all. I'm on them the whole entire time.
All right. So you're challenging them, but because that's the hard part, right? Going back to that three-dimensional space.
So it's a good conversation because many people go unconscious again. And they return back to their unconscious behaviors and thoughts and reactions emotionally. And we all do it. And but I'm happy to say that our community of people do the work. They do the work. They're not philosophers. They're engaged. I'm proud of that so many of our community make time in the morning to do their meditations.
Because that's what it's about. It's not a week of enlightenment and you go home. And this is really about doing the work when they get home.
Yeah, but you know what? I hit it 1,000 different ways. And like when we finished Cancun, I had so many people saying to me, stopping me in the elevator or wherever, saying, I got it. I just never understood it like I understood it. And I'm so excited. They connect. And now they don't, it's not like, oh God, I got to do my meditation today. They're like, the magic's happening. I want to keep the magic going. I want to keep it going. So we have this new thing we're doing called Leaving the Monastery. And it's just a way for us to provide a service to our advancing community where I come on and remind them of what they're doing and review things so that they can stay connected and be accountable for what they're learning. And it's a way for them to stay conscious. And then we finish the event with the mystical and the interest in activating latent systems in the brain so that people can have an experience that changes them forever. That we're not linear beings living a linear life. We're, in fact, very dimensional. And when you begin to activate these latent systems, there's a connection between the physics of the field with the biology of the brain. And when that system switches on, people really have a very profound, full-on sensory experience without their senses. And it's been really cool because when we did Berlin, we had
Can you engineer this to
Yeah,
where it happens?
we can make it. We can stimulate it. In fact, it's another formula.
And it happens on the 7th day, though, after all of the
6 and 7, the last 2 days we do it,
Okay.
and we're up early in the morning because that's when the neurotransmitters are at the raw materials are at their height.
That's when you connect with the divine, around 4:30 in the morning, right?
That's my time.
That's
yeah.
your preferred time.
Yeah, that's my time.
Is this the kind of experience, with mystical experience, connecting with the divine?
Yeah, and again, very, very specific science that we discuss. The people have a great understanding of the process.
That's important to you, the science.
The science is the language.
Why is that? Because a lot of people that would do what you do, they wouldn't bother with the science because it would work.
Because the science is the language of mysticism. I mean, the moment you start talking about a religious or tradition or an ancient culture, you're going to divide an audience because you hear a certain word and you can't associate with it, or you have a meaning that's not the correct meaning. You divide a community, you divide an audience, and I think science unifies. And plus, whoever said whatever 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years ago, that was the language of 2,000 or 5,000 or 1,000 years ago. It wasn't the language of today, you know. So science is that language, I think. And so when you begin to bridge the mystical with the science and you start talking about these systems, in fact, actually, when we are in Toronto, we're going to stream the teaching for this particular meditation called the pineal gland meditation. We'll stream it on I think it's on a Wednesday night. I think it's September 4th or September 5th. And then Thursday, you can join the group and actually do the meditation with our community.
This is the mystical part.
This is the mystical part. And boy, oh boy, you know, when people connect and have those mystical experiences, I mean, the energy and the craziness and the wonder and all that stuff is pretty exciting. So I love that stuff because when you start having those mystical moments, you start taking this reality a lot less seriously. And on my own personal journey, I can tell you that, well, I've had some crazy mystical moments in the last few months, and it's exciting. You're less interested in politics. You're less interested in the way you look. You're less interested in what people think about you. You're less interested in so many other things. Your mind is preoccupied with how big this reality is of possibilities. So it's a full week, to answer your question, and we have team leaders that help connect with the community, that help them answer questions, you know, make sure they're doing okay. So they're big events, but we have great team leaders that work with our community to keep them, keep them going.
Okay, you mentioned the pineal gland, so might as well talk a little bit about that. So, you know, Joe, I have a morning routine. You know, I wake up, right after I wake up, I make sure I, do some meditation. I do my affirmations. I do a gratitude journal. I've been doing it for many years, and I think it's a great practice. I teach it inside my academy. It's great, but I will honestly probably say that it's also become routine to me to a certain extent. And so I think there's definitely a flaw a little bit in this pattern that I have set up. Also, in the last few months, I've gone down to Costa Rica and had a few ayahuasca ceremonies, and I'd love to get your thoughts on both of those occurrences that I'm going through. I came back, I had a lot of ideas, a lot of realizations. I also knew I was coming back into this very material world, and I'm gonna have to deal with my own patterns, even though I'm fortunate enough to have people like you come and tell me these things, and a lot of great new ideas. Sometimes it's still hard to put that stuff into practice.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you think of that experience, the plant medicine experience, the psychedelic experience, and then also trying to bring that stuff back and quote unquote integrate that. Yeah. And then also maybe a way that I should deal with some of these routines of mine, because a lot of people watching us have these basic routines, but they're just basic. They're not like the 7-day immersive experience where they really leave the physical. For me, they're almost like brushing my teeth. And so I'm curious what you're going to say, because you're smiling.
Well, first and foremost, we don't deny the physical. I mean, everybody eats, everybody sleeps, we dance. I mean, it's a very action-packed. It's not denial of the senses. It's not like that. It's just when we work, we work. When we play, we play. When we dance, we dance. But when it comes time to get to work, we get to work. So Your first question about plant medicine. Actually don't have a problem with plant medicine. It turns out that if you have those receptors for that particular substance in your brain, it means then your brain must make it naturally. It wouldn't be there unless the receptor was there. And so those particular chemicals from ayahuasca fit in the same receptor sites as serotonin and melatonin, but they're a little bit diverse. Dimethyltryptamine just has a different signature. And what it does is it hits those serotonin receptors and it causes you to perceive reality differently. And it causes you actually to perceive more of reality when that veil is dropped. Now, I think it's important for people that are stuck to do something like that just so they can get a glimpse of how big it is and how small they're playing.
Right.
And
a little bit about kind of what you do, similar ideas.
Yeah.
Just look at, there's more outside than
yeah,
just you.
and to see is to be able to think and perceive greater than how you feel typically, because that's where the magic happens. So the plant medicine is a great way to open that door for people. But the question always is functioning in your world. The question is, how is that going to help you function in your life? Because if it can't help you function in your life, then it's not instrumental in by any means. It's an insight, but insight really doesn't change behavior. I can say your father was a perfectionist and that's why you have anxiety, and you say that's right, but it doesn't change your anxiety. You still go around saying my father was a perfectionist and that's why I have anxiety. Actually, you reaffirm it, right? So then that insight then is a portal, is a door. And I know that certain people become reliant on exogenous substances to take away their pain, to take away their lack, to take away their anxiety, to take away their fear, whatever it is, their hostility. They're doing it to escape an emotion. And when you do it to escape an emotion, the moment you notice a change in how you're feeling, in other words, you feel better, you begin to remember what caused it. So you associate that change with something outside of you. So every time you start feeling that lack or that emptiness or that fear or that anxiety or that hostility, your brain's going to say you need this. So people start becoming very dependent on something outside of them to give them that experience. And I think this is the downfall, because people will say, I've done 75 ayahuasca journeys and I still have cancer. Well, let's try something else, because that's not working. You know, I mean, it's about what's going to help a person, right? So it turns out that there's this tiny little gland in the back of your brain called the pineal gland. It's about the size of a grain of rice, a little bigger. And that pineal gland produces serotonin and melatonin. Now, serotonin is the daytime neurotransmitter. You wake up in the morning, your eye perceives the wavelength of light coming off the sun or coming off these incandescent bulbs. That wavelength is picked up by the optic nerve. It sends a signal to a nucleus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which signals the sympathetic nervous system, and the pineal gland starts making serotonin, and you get up and you get going, your brain waves turn into beta, and now you're up and you're aware. You're in space and time. When there's an inhibition of light, your optic nerve isn't perceiving that wavelength of light, specific wavelength, then all of a sudden the inhibition signals the same pattern, and all of a sudden the pineal gland takes serotonin and makes melatonin. It makes you sleepy, it makes you want to go into restorative sleep, your brain waves slow down, and all of a sudden you get into that dream world a little bit more. And so when you're laying down and you're dreaming, your body's repairing and restoring from the day. So serotonin is kind of the stimulating, get us up in the morning, and melatonin is what puts us to bed at night. Now, melatonin levels are at their height between 1 and 4 in the morning. And if the pineal gland, its latent systems can become activated, all of a sudden now, it is going to take melatonin and make 5 derivatives, not just dimethyltryptamine, that's one of them. And melatonin's already an antioxidant. Now it becomes a very upgraded set of antioxidants, very powerful antioxidants. Melatonin already helps you to dream, but now you are going to really dream. Melatonin puts the body into stasis, but now you're going to produce the same chemical that's found in hibernating animals, really go into stasis, no sex drive, no appetite, no preoccupation with your outer environment. The body's in a perfect resting state. Melatonin already relaxes you, but now you're going to produce a benzodiazepine, which is a Valium, and you are going to really chill out. I mean, you're going to have no survival center switched on. You're going to produce a chemical that's the same chemical found in electric eels, which is going to produce very powerful amplitudes in the nervous system, and we've measured this in so many brain scans. In fact, we can predict it when it's going to happen. And the amount of energy in the brain that we're capturing when a person has this system switched on, I don't think it's ever been recorded in the history of neuroscience. Now, we're talking about levels of energy that are hundreds of standard deviations outside of normal. Like most people, whether we're measuring your eyesight or your height or your liver enzymes or your hearing or whatever, if you took 1,000 people and you measured everybody's eyesight, you would get this bell curve called the Z-curve. And if you were to do the mathematics and draw a line down right the middle of that bell curve, and you divide it into 3, you would get 3 standard deviations above normal and 3 standard deviations below normal. And that makes up 99.7% of the population. So 68% is normal, right? A little bit above, a little bit below. Then you have people that are better eyesight, a little worse eyesight. And you have people with really great eyesight, really poor eyesight. And that's pretty much 99.7% of the population, where we fall in that bell curve. Well, the amount of energy that we're capturing in the brain when this system is switched on is 200 to 300 standard deviations outside of normal, sometimes 400. So now, this is supernatural. The amount of energy in the brain that's going on in there is just outstanding. So
it's dangerous.
Well, the person's lit up, and their brain is in a super aroused state.
And this is all happening through that pineal gland meditation.
Yeah, through the pineal gland meditation.
Okay.
So now,
it's a long process.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
It could be. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. Okay. But what happens is when those latent systems switch on, melatonin gets an upgrade. And when it gets an upgrade, those chemicals are going to fit into the same receptor sites as serotonin and melatonin, but now they're going to be carrying a very different message. So then what's the importance behind that? Well, instead of just having one chemical like dimethyltryptamine that fits into the same receptor sites that causes those insights, now you're getting all 5 of these chemicals, and the body is going to get an upgrade. It's just going to begin to get a very high energetic upgrade. So we do a certain breath to begin to activate the pineal gland. And the pineal gland has tiny little crystals, calcite crystals, that are rhombohedrons. They're these geometric structures, and they're stacked on top of each other. And when we do this breath, we inhale and we pull this cerebrospinal fluid up into our brain, and then we squeeze and we compress those crystals. And the research on the pineal gland says that the pineal gland has piezoelectric properties, which means you take one form of stress, mechanical stress, you apply mechanical stress, and it produces an electrical charge. So you're actually activating the pineal gland to become electric. When you begin to compress those crystals and it begins to become electrically activated, it produces a resonant field. And that field will stretch as far as the crystals can go, and then the field will reverse and compress the crystals again. And all of a sudden, you have a radio receiver. You have an antenna there. And if you keep doing it and you keep stimulating, the antenna starts beeping a little faster. And once it starts beeping at a certain frequency, beyond the speed of light, beyond the wavelength of light, now it's going to pick up information from the quantum. Not from your eye, but from the field. And that wavelength being faster is going to connect the physics of the field carrying that information with the biology of the brain. And now all of those neurotransmitters are going to be released. And the next thing you know, that person's going to have a very profound mystical experience. And then when that happens, there's a gate in the brainstem that opens up called the thalamic gate. And when that gate opens up, here comes this rush of energy right up into the brain, and the brain goes into a super aroused state, gamma brainwave patterns. Now the person is super conscious, but not just any type of gamma patterns. Very super coherent, highly organized gamma brainwave patterns, and the amount of energy that the brain is producing is off the chart. So if you had an experience like that and you told me, hey, dude, I just had the most incredible experience, I would be like, yeah, sure. You know, I might believe you, I might not. If you told me, oh my God, I went through this tunnel, it was unbelievable, I'd say, yeah, okay. But if I saw it on your brain scan, then I would say, oh my goodness, there's no doubt about it that you had this experience. So if people are coming out saying, man, I need a day or two to process what just happened to me. Now, so then
you scan some of these people's brains.
We
in
have
real
them.
Okay.
Yeah, we have them.
And would this experience be similar to maybe an ayahuasca?
Of course, it would be ayahuasca on steroids.
Okay.
It would be.
Sounds very intense what you're talking about.
Oh, it's incredibly intense, but it's also incredibly liberating, and so people are prepared for it. I mean, we're not just throwing them in there. They understand that there are multiple dimensions that they can experience, and that if the window opens, if the doors of dimension open to them, it's going to change them on a very profound level. So then once the pineal system's activate, it signals the pituitary. The pituitary gland begins to release oxytocin, which causes the heart to swell. And now the person is feeling incredible gratitude and incredible love. And now 1,400 different chemicals are released into the body, and the person is feeling so connected that they start drawing from the field. And all of a sudden, we see all kinds of health conditions in a matter of moments literally disappear.
Wow.
So
this is that mystical experience that you do towards the end.
Yeah, we do it the last 2 days, and I mean, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. Sure. I mean, there's but again, if people are interested, they can join the streaming and
we'll put the link to that down below.
But the cool thing about it is now we just did a bunch of experiments. I was saying in Berlin at an event that we did, I think in May of this year. And we had about 1,250 people at that event, and we had our team of brain scientists there, and boy, we even advanced the measurements even further, because now we're seeing this profoundly similar pattern where just before the person goes into that high gamma state, we see them produce these really highly coherent theta brainwave states. Now, when theta gets coherent like that, then theta is like the harmonic or the wave that carries the gamma. It's the thruster, it's the amplifier.
Typically the meditation?
Yeah, through the meditation. So it's almost like a person gets into the state, they connect, they're so relaxed, they're so surrendered, and then boom, throw the switch, and now they're lit up. And now they're super aroused. But normally when we see arousal in the brain, it usually comes from a stress response, from some threat or some danger. The brain goes into this high beta brainwave pattern that looks a little bit like gamma, but it's erratic. So now you're getting an arousal, but the arousal is the sympathetic nervous system switching on, but it's not coming from anything outside. The sympathetic nervous system is opening up, and now you're just seeing all this energy from the body moving into the brain, and the autonomic nervous system on the brain scans are just on fire. They're just lit up, which means it's definitely coming from within them. What does the autonomic nervous system do? It automatically controls your digestion, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature, your blood sugar levels. Now, the autonomic nervous system is processing a new stream of consciousness, and that's what begins to produce the significant changes that we're seeing instantaneously.
That's what's affecting the physical, you believe?
They're getting a biological upgrade.
Right, very quickly.
Very quickly. And so then...
something that could probably never be prescribed even.
And the person will say, I'm healed. I know it. They'll say, I know I'm healed. So we've seen all kinds of very significant changes happen right after the experience. And so...
how long have you been doing this?
Well, we've been doing this meditation for a good 5 or 6 years now, and it's...
but just lately you're doing it on a mass scale on the 7th day, 6th day, so you're really seeing the effects.
Yeah, and I don't know, Brian, I don't know if I'm saying it better or people are understanding it more, or it's just the consciousness, but it's just getting easier for people. I mean, it's just people are doing it, and like the event we had in Cancun, it was pretty stellar, pretty spectacular. So...
do you get yourself in this state sometimes too?
Oh yeah, I live for that.
Does it happen when everyone else is, or do you have to do that on your own?
Boy. Sometimes it happens spontaneously for me, and...
you did an interview recently where you talked about this downloads. You get them at certain points in time, and you said sometimes you do get them, when you're teaching and when you're...
Yeah. The door opens lately for me, and it's pretty wild. But yeah, I guess I just trust. I mean, I don't know. I just trust, and I think I'm the best when I just do that. I just don't try to figure it out. I just connect with the audience, and I have an idea of where I'm going, but I just stay open to how it turns out. And we just did an event in Jacksonville, Florida. It was called Dreamtime. Dreamtime was the second one we did, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. Now, this was an interesting event because this is only for people that want this mystical more than anything, because the event goes from 11 at night till 8 in the morning. Then they have the whole day to do whatever they want. They go to the beach, they can sleep, whatever. But we're in between worlds. They're up and down all night long, and I'm working with them. And boy, a lot of those people had some really profound moments. And again, when that door opens, you cannot be Brian again. There's some conditioning, some veil that's removed, and you start seeing the real meaning behind all things. And that's what I want for our community. I want them, back to your question, to be able to function from a greater level of reality, a greater level of consciousness. Well, how does that work? If you have a full-on sensory experience without your senses, you're sitting there with your eyes closed, and it's more real than where you're sitting right now. Okay? If your senses right now were heightened by a little bit, say 25%, everything you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, if your senses were heightened by 25%, your awareness of everything around you would be heightened, yes? Well, awareness is consciousness, and you can't have consciousness without energy. So a person now is having an inner experience that they're waking up. And so experience enriches circuits in your brain. That's what experience does. And experience produces emotions. But the emotion the person is feeling isn't fear, isn't unworthiness, isn't self-doubt, isn't victimization or suffering. It's a thrill. It's awe. It's an incredible electricity. And they feel it in every cell of their body. And the stronger the emotion that they feel, the more they're paying attention to the images in their brain. So when they come back to awareness, now they can perceive a broader spectrum of reality, because now their brain is wired to perceive what has always existed, but they didn't have the circuits in place to perceive it, right? So then how do we evolve? Well, that's to me, that's an upgrade to the operating system of the human being that has a divine quality to them. Instead of the slow linear process of evolution that takes place by trial and error, the Darwinian model of overcoming your environment, changing your behavior, doing it several times, passing the gene on, and several thousands or millions of years you see a change in leg lengths, or change in neck, or change in eyesight, or change in hemoglobin, or whatever it is. This is happening in an instantaneous way. So now the system is beginning to activate the operating system of the divine qualities in us. And so then chemistry changes, oxytocin levels go up. We've measured this in our students. Well, oxytocin is the love chemical. So imagine your oxytocin levels going up by 200%. The research shows if your oxytocin levels go up slightly, you can't even hold a grudge. Why would you want to lose this feeling? So you say to somebody, you're totally okay, because this feeling I don't want to lose, right? So unconditional love is the side effect of you mastering yourself, right? And so when you feel that amazing and you feel that wonderful, the only thing you want to do is give. You say, and you feel so whole, you no longer want anything. All of a sudden you start giving, and that's who we are. That's our innate capacity to be human beings. So there's a upgrade in the operating system of the latent systems in the brain and body that connect us to our divinity, or who we really are. Not when we're animal, not when we're in survival, not when we're threatened. That's all the primitive humanity stuff. But this is our divine nature. And so when that energy is baptizing the body, the tiny little cells have little skeletal structures in them called microtubules. And those microtubules are sensitive to frequency. And once those systems open up and the person is feeling that incredible sense of gratitude and love, they're in a state of receiving. They're no longer wanting, they're in a state of receiving. And there's a reversal in the field around the body, and it starts to draw energy into the body, and those microtubules start vibrating a little faster. And those microtubules, when they vibrate, the cell emits coherent light and information. When the cell is not vibrating in a coherent way, and this is science, by the way, the cell has to emit coherent light and information for that information to be communicated to the next cell, the neighboring cell. And that's the radio station everybody's on. The moment the cell starts getting incoherent, there's no longer a signal between cells. Well, the moment there's an increase in the vibratory state of the cell that's emitting more coherent light and information, all of a sudden all the cells get on the same radio station in a matter of seconds. Those microtubules start raising the frequency of the cell, and all disease, according to the quantum model, is lowering of frequency. So now the body gets a biological upgrade and the rash goes away. The hearing comes back, the tumor disappears. It just happens as a side effect of them connecting to the field.
Will you ever be able to scale this? I keep thinking about, like, what if 1 billion people had this experience, Joe? But you said before this isn't for everyone.
It isn't for everyone.
Why is that?
Because, well, it wasn't for my mother. I could tell my mother, your blood pressure's high because the stock market crashed, and she'd go to the doctor anyway. And the doctor would give her a diuretic, and then she'd start getting dizzy, and I'd say, dizziness is from the diuretic you're taking. The side effect is dizziness. Then she passed out, and then I said to her, the diuretic is causing you to pass out. And he went back to the doctor, and then he had to do all these heart scans because he thought something was wrong with the heart. And I said, it's none of those things, it's the medication. And he finally goes to the specialist, and the specialist says, it's the drug. But she had to hear it from the doctor. People are conditioned, in that way. And but I'm so happy that more and more people are actually jumping ship, because I used to be concerned about everybody getting it. But there are people that are just not going to like me or like this model at all. They're not going to like me anyway. So why would I try to convince them? I'd rather talk to the people that actually are open to it. So,
right. So you have to believe it can happen, otherwise it won't. You have to have your mind at least open to the possibility. Because you said, as you're with your mom, she's in this kind of really old school model where I got to listen to these
No.
people.
My mom would tell you that she was open to it until something went wrong.
Okay.
I mean, this is the defining moment.
Right. Okay.
Because when something went wrong, then all of a sudden I would say to her, look, I can show you. Look, it says right here the side effect. She wouldn't hear it from me. She had to go to the doctor. So people are conditioned, is my point.
So you have to have a real, true belief.
I think that people are now, because information is so available, Brian, I don't think they're so interested in a doctor telling them how it is. I mean, people get diagnosed all the time, and they go home and they get on the internet and they research their condition. They know as much about the condition as their doctor, and they show up at their doctor's office and they say, I want to try this, and the doctor says, that doesn't work, or I don't know anything about that, and they say, time to find a new doctor. I mean, people are taking their power back and taking their responsibility. So when chemotherapy fails, when radiation fails, when the surgery doesn't help the person, or the person saying, I don't know that I want to get that organ cut out, or I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Is there another alternative? Well, if you start with the most conservative means of healthcare and you work your way up to the most radical, you always have choices. You start with the most radical, you lose choices right away, right? So I think people in history, at this time in history, are reasoning with that. I mean, and I can make it really simple. 3 types of stress: physical, chemical, and emotional. Physical stress, trauma, accidents, injuries, falls. Chemical stress, bacteria, viruses, food allergies, toxins in foods, hangovers, whatever. Emotional stress, traffic jams, internet connections, second mortgages, single parenting. All of those things knock the brain and body out of balance. You keep knocking the body out of balance like that, that imbalance becomes the new balance. Now the person's headed for disease. So then, what about getting people more physically, chemically, and emotionally balanced? If you get them more chemically balanced and more physically balanced, they're going to be more emotionally balanced. You get them more emotionally balanced, you get them more physically balanced, they're going to be more chemically balanced. It's just the way it is, right? So it's interesting because many people will say, well, it's mystical what you're doing. Really? Actually, it's not. Because most stressors wind up as emotional and psychological stress. That's the tough one. 75 to 90% of most people that enter a doctor's office come in because of psychological or emotional stress. So then a person's able to self-regulate their emotional state over and over again. They're going to reset their baseline. So it's science. So then when a person's working on getting more emotionally balanced and they're able to sustain that, the side effect of that, just by them doing nothing, is the body's going to go, I'm out of emergency. I got energy for growth and repair. I got energy for a long-term project. And so I think we can demystify it to such a degree that people start to realize that makes sense to me. So I've been out of balance with my emotions. I've been super frustrated, super judgmental, super angry, super anxious, whatever it is. And so most people don't think that they can control that, but it turns out you absolutely can. And it's a skill. So then you're in a community with 1,000 people and everybody's doing it. There's agreement for that. So then my message is, don't wait for the crisis. Don't wait for the loss or the diagnosis. Change your future by doing the work, and you can head off that destiny for yourself. So people are waking up to that model a little bit more, and they want that. So we have a great community of people that are super conscious. They're really engaged, and they're interested in making history, and they're interested in being challenged, because they know that if they're challenged, they're going to grow. And like I said to the group in Florida, I said, you know why you're here. There's no victims here. You know that I'm going to wake you up in the middle of the night. You know that you want the mystical. So are we all cool with that? Yeah, let's go. And it was a big slumber party, and it was wonderful. So I think when it's framed the right way, I think people can resonate with it a little bit more. Now, as far as your routine goes, well, let's face it, we're creatures of habit. I shake up my routine as much as I can, because when I'm out of that kind of consistent, predictable state, I'm in the unknown. And so people get locked into a routine, then what happens is when they're doing the routine, they're not present. Because if they're in the program, they're thinking about the next thing that they have to do, because in a program, the brain's always anticipating. So that doesn't mean that a gratitude journal isn't great. That doesn't mean that your meditation isn't wonderful. Your affirmations are ineffective. No, it means that you got to change it up. You got to change it up. Do a walking meditation for 2 weeks. Take your body out for a walk and condition it to a new mind. Do a seated meditation and really work on feeling an incredible amount of gratitude and sustain it for a period of time and make it familiar to you so that you stay with it. So I try to mix it up and change it as much as I can, because when I'm outside of that routine, that's when the unknown starts to happen. When you're in the routine, many people don't want the unknown to happen because it would mess up the routine.
Right.
Like if that goes on right now, I'm going to be late for my next thing, right? So then people start getting fixated on the known, and they don't have any room for the unknown. So mix it up a little bit and play a little bit and try something else. It's okay to break from the routine, because it's all going to work anyway.
Right. You do some talks on the teen brain, and I have a teenage stepdaughter, and I was a teenager once, and I remembered kind of how I was, but I think a lot of people don't know how to relate sometimes to teens, especially adults, and I just wanted to get your take on that.
We just did this great teen workshop in Mexico City. We had about 210 teenagers there. We put it together in 2 weeks, and what a response we got from that community. I was down there doing an event with Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden in Mexico City, and I wanted to do this teen workshop because the last time I was there, all these young people wanted to have lunch with me, and I said, I'd rather have lunch with you than anybody else. So we got in a room, we sat around, and they were asking me really great questions, like questions about changing the world, questions about what really matters. And so we've done teen workshops before, but I wanted to really take it to the next level. So the teenage brain is a very interesting brain because you're going from boy to man, young girl to woman, and that period is just a lot of biological changes that take place. And once you understand that it's your biology, and you understand that it's estrogen or progesterone or testosterone, it's not like you're going to excuse yourself for it, but you have a greater understanding that you're changing. Now, when we did this course for these teenagers, they were like, we're really happy, but why don't you tell our parents this? Because they need to hear it more than we do, which is absolutely the truth. So we go over values. What are values? Why are values so necessary? And we break them into different groups from the 12 or 13-year-old all the way to 19-year-old, and they come up with the 3 most important values for them. And then we go over the chemistry of the teen brain, the male and the female brain, and they just love it. They understand what testosterone does and why they take risks and why they speak less and why they're more disinterested in their parents and why they think their parents they're not smart or don't know what they're doing, and how the female brain needs social structures and connecting and communication and where the values lie in that. And you could see these kids kind of switch on. And when we finished, here's an example, we finished that particular session, and one kid posted on Facebook, "Hey Mom, now I understand why I always blow you off and not listen. It's because my testosterone levels are up 20%. We need to talk." He's figured it out, right? Not like I excuse myself, but more like, let's have a conversation so you understand this is part of my biology. And then we teach them the principles of leadership, because you have to know what the qualities of leadership are, and they get really engaged in that. And then we teach them how to create reality. We teach them how to do it. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And then we give them the mic at the end, and boy, there's just a really great opportunity for these kids to open their hearts. And they were so appreciative. These kids were so wonderful. They were like, "Hey, my aunt turned us on to you. She drives us to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we listen to you in the car all the time, and we're totally here and happy to be here and excited." I mean, these are kids that really wanted to learn. So a lot of those kids actually wound up coming to the weekend because they were so switched on. So I think they're the seeds of our future. I think that when we can connect with them on that level and help them understand their biology a little bit better and understand some things that they can utilize in their life, it's super important. And we had 3 teenagers there that have been in my work, standing up, telling them their miraculous stories. And it wasn't me saying anything. One of them stood up and full ride to Duke University, created the whole thing, used the work to do it. Another super sweet kid living in Austria and created a great thing. And then we brought a guy from the United States, actually from Canada. He started in my work when he was this big. Now he's a gorgeous 19-year-old guy and just lives it, and just got up there and just spoke from his heart, and the kids were just so excited to see the example of what's possible. That's the lead by example model that I want for children, so that they're not unconscious, that they have a certain amount of emotional intelligence, that they understand that they have more control over themselves and their lives than they once thought, and to understand that change is a constant in their life, and that they have to understand what it means to change. And we'll keep doing them because there's a strong interest. In fact, it's one of the most common questions we get from our database, our customer services.
How can we get our teenagers involved?
Yeah, and so we're doing it. And I want to do a 2-day teen event because there's so many more things I wanted to do with them. We just ran out of time, but it was excellent, really fun.
And do you want to do something that teaches parents also about the teens?
Yeah. I think we'll do a weekend, and then we'll bring the parents in after lunch on Sunday, and then I'll bridge the 2 worlds. But the kids were like, "Why do my parents make this so difficult? It seems so easy," because they don't have the baggage,
Right.
But it was so beautiful, Brian, because there were kids that said, "Hey, thanks so much. My mom had cancer, now she doesn't, and I'm here because I want to know what she knows." And I mean, these were genuinely sincere kids that were there because they witnessed their parents make some big changes. And I think that is the fast track to enlightenment, when an adult is not only just lecturing their kids about how to do something or telling them what to do, but you witness it, you know, mirror neurons in the brain, or empathy neurons, they pay more attention to behaviors than what comes out of our mouths. So children are modeling behaviors all the time. So when they pay attention to their parents making a significant change, their parents are showing up unpredictable. And the moment they're showing up unpredictable, they're out of routine, they're out of the program, something's different about them, and they pay attention to that. And they look to see how real it is, and they see that they're changed. And that is the best way to help someone change, not by saying you need to do this or you need to do that, but because you're it, and then people want to know what that is and how you got there. And so, and I think that's what's happening with a lot of the kids. They're coming for a whole different reason instead of their parents telling them. And I mean, there were kids there that their parents wanted them to come, and as soon as they saw the teenagers talk, right when we started, the 2 teenagers to 2 girls got up and talked, and that lit them up right away because they realized that it was evidence.
Right. Plus, they're pre-educated a lot like your adult people as well, so they come in on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's probably some of the reasons you're getting so far so quickly, and you're probably getting better at it, and all of that stuff adds up.
Yeah, and there's a momentum.
Yeah.
There's basically a momentum going on. I mean, it's not about me in any way. I mean, it's about our community, and I want to nurture that community. I want to provide opportunities for us to continue to push the margin or the limit of what we think is possible. I want to stay open to learning and to restructuring and building the model even better. I want to get better at communicating it. I want to get better at documenting what we're doing, and I want to get consistent, because if we can get really consistent at this, we can help we can help the world in a big way.
There's something called the Maharaja effect, I think it was called. It was back in the day when there was the meditation started and the Beatles went to India, and they were saying that if 1% of the world would take this on, it would have a measured impact.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you ever think about that. Okay, you can't help everyone, not everyone's going to be open-minded, but if you help a certain percentage, it would literally change the atmosphere of a city or of a room.
Yeah, social coherence is one of my interests now, and I was actually just at the HeartMath Institute for a few days there because we were looking at my research and their research and what we did together, and we want to start measuring that like in a very specific way, because I think it's an important element to address. I mean, we are so conditioned into believing how powerless we are. It's just not even a thought. We just don't think we can. Our thoughts do nothing. That's what most people think. But when people start to realize that they do have an effect, and that when you get a group of people that can elevate their energy, they can open their hearts, and they understand that the body and the heart begin to produce a magnetic field, and that field can influence other people if there's a thought or an intent laid on that. And we've done the measurements to prove that. Then you start to realize that when you get enough people doing that it affects people's autonomic nervous system. In other words, when you do it, and you send the thought that everybody in the room, that their lives be enriched, their bodies be healed, that the dreams come true, that the mystical find them, and they're wearing heart rate monitors, and you see those people go into heart coherence at the exact same time, at the exact same day, in the exact same meditation, you realize that we're bound by this invisible field of energy. And so because of that, we've done some global coherence meditations. We had 46,000 people on our last one, which is a pretty good statistic. But here's my thought. And the HeartMath Institute has their Global Coherence Project as well. And we want to do something where we do it all together, right? And I think we will in the next year or so. But the thing is that if you look at the peace-gathering projects that have taken place in the last 40 years or so, yeah, there's crime rates that go down, violence goes down, economic growth goes up, and there's a strong correlation between the sun's activity and a lot of these things. But when the projects were over, crime returned back to its normal value, and violence and car accidents randomly started increasing again. So it's not enough to just think it and to focus on it or feel it. We have to live that prayer. We have to demonstrate it. The prayer goes on. You have to be eyes open now in that energy. And then if you're forgiving, if you're not cheating your neighbor, if you're not manipulating outcomes, if you're not reacting violently to certain situations or judging other people because you're self-regulating, then other people around you that observe you will start doing the same. So the problem is a lot of people do that, and then they go unconscious and they're cutting people off as they drive out of the, peace be with you, at church, shake your hands, peace be with you, get in your car and cut people off as you're trying to get out of the parking lot. Like, that can't be there. I mean, you can't want peace and be arguing with your relative or your coworker. You got to take care of that. So the model has to be in the realm of demonstration too, because if you keep demonstrating it, you'll go from thinking to doing to being. And when you're in that state of being, then all of a sudden you got a community of people that now have memorized an internal state that's greater than any condition in their outer environment, and that's when the environment begins to respond. So I do think it's possible, but given the amount of time information travels around the world with whatever crisis we're in, that does affect people, so we have to be the demonstration of it. And as all these paradigms begin to fall apart, I mean, whether it's politics or economics or the environment or education or the religion or the medical model, whatever is collapsing, they're all collapsing. Journalism, it's all falling apart because something greater has to happen. And information creates awareness. Awareness is consciousness, so consciousness is energy, so you have a change in energy. So any system that's no longer consistent with that change in energy is going to unravel. But that chaos is just unpredictable order. Something greater is going to reorganize as long as you and I are not living in fear, in hostility, in anger, in suffering. We have to rise above that. Then when we do, we help to create that reorganization. And we're not reacting in the same way that actually with those emotions and consciousness that created the problem in the first place. So we have to be a different breed. That's the point I'm trying to make, and that's what all this work is for. I'm hoping that on some level we change the future of this planet, because most people are feeling so much love that they can't be angry. That they're so conscious that they see the manipulation that goes on to keep people controlled, and they just don't play the game anymore, and people start waking up. And I do think that it's possible that we see that in this lifetime.
Yeah, I hope so. Tell me about wine.
What about it? I love wine.
What is your relationship with wine? And I know you do with these wine tours, and what can we learn from wine? Because it's not obvious that Dr. Joe would be teaching me about wine and using this material thing to change my state.
God, I grew up in an Italian family, and my grandfather, my mother's father, was a great winemaker. He made Burgundies mostly, and had a press down there, and my uncles and my father would go down there, and he would make wine, and we would taste his wine. I mean, I drank wine from the time I was 5 years old. We had wine at every meal from the time I was 5. Everybody drank wine. It was just what we did. And so I was at this conference in Costa Rica, this small little exclusive little thing that I do at the end of the year. And it was the first one that I did, and it just turned out to be really great. And the people that ran it just said, "Hey, we'll take you anywhere in the world. Where do you want to go?" And I said, I don't really want to go anywhere. I've been everywhere. I go for people. I don't go to see the world. And they said, no, come on, you got something on your bucket list. And I thought, God, I did all these experiments on red wine years ago. I'd love to talk about my research, So I started doing these wine tours because I created an artificial stomach, and I put all the digestive enzymes in this artificial stomach, like hydrochloric acid, like the same amount, molar concentration that your stomach secretes, trypsin, chymotrypsin, pepsin, pepsinogen, put all the quantities and concentrations in the proper order. Had a friend of mine and I were he's a nuclear chemist, so he was working with me, and we set it up and purged the system with a gas called argon gas, so it could be an anaerobic digestive process, and brought the system up to body temperature, and then hooked up the system to an analyzer called a chemiluminescent analyzer. And we poured a glass of red wine in there, and then we trapped the vapors. And it turns out that there's a specific chemical that we captured that is a sister molecule to nitrous oxide, laughing gas. But it's just one molecule away from nitrous oxide. And it creates a very strong change in blood flow to your brain and to your heart. So a glass of red wine causes the arteries in your heart and your brain to actually dilate, to actually open up. So now you have more blood going to your heart, more energy going to your heart, and more energy going to your brain. The chemical also creates plasticity in neurons, and plasticity is neurons' ability to unhook and rehook. So this particular chemical creates plasticity in the brain. So if neurons begin to loosen up their connections, they're not so hardwired. If every place where one neuron connects with another neuron is a memory, it's kind of like the memory of who you think you are starts to soften. You're not so rigid in your programs. And when we were doing the research, there was a French study right at the same time where, of course, the French do it on 3 glasses of red wine, that it increases the number of dendrites a neuron can grow. It produces a chemical called MAP kinase, and it increases by 9-fold. So now you have more energy going to your brain, you have, and to your heart. You have a plasticity, so you're not your hardwired self. You got more connections growing, and it's a perfect time, really, to help people to transform. So we do these wine tours, and people, of course, think they're coming for wine and everything. It's that, but it's much more. And so we teach them the process, and they have really profound changes and breakthroughs. And it's done in a lighthearted. We eat great food, and people make some pretty big shifts and have a lot of fun in the process.
Because you talk about your ideas and you drink the wine and they connect with each other.
There's a transformation that takes place that is so intangible.
Huh.
And there's some work, we do some work, and it helps them to get there a little faster. So yeah, I've seen as much transformation in a wine tour as I've seen in some of my events for people.
That's
yeah, it's pretty wild.
Peculiar, right?
It's wild, isn't it? Yeah.
And wine has been around, for thousands and thousands of years, right? I mean,
yeah, it's in every historical culture, right, in some way, right? So, yeah.
There's something going on there.
Yeah, there's something going on.
Yeah. What do you think, Joe's doing in 10 years? What do you think your life is? You come back here, we have our, 14th conversation, and I'm like, Joe, what are you up to? It's, almost 2030. What's happening now? And you're like, well, this is what's happening, Brian. Like, what do you think it would be? And I know you're not the kind of guy that's totally regulated by your things you want to achieve. It feels like you're in the moment now and you want to do things better and get more transformations and things. But what do you think this could look like?
Well, it's my hope that people execute this and these principles at a consistent and greater level, that we go into a city to do a week-long event, that we contact the children's hospital in that city, and we ask those children to come that have cancers or diseases, and we change them. That's what, and never touch them. And that we get so good at it that that we make a difference. That people can not only heal one another, but they can experience such levels of self-satisfaction, such levels of true joy and appreciation, that we get super inventive, super genius. We solve the problems of the water in the oceans, and we solve the problems with pollution and garbage, and we figure things out. There's a greater level of human beings living and coexisting to a greater degree, and we're innovative, and we're creative, and we're genius, and we're joyful, and that we have access and I'm taking a chance here, but we have access to travel in time. We have access to dimensions. We know how to create. We know how to manifest. We know how to do it. Or we live longer lives. We live healthier lives. We make a difference in other people's lives. We're connected again to the earth and to nature. In that we change the destiny of a planet that's in a little bit of trouble here. So I don't know if in 10 years from now, if we get better at doing this, I think that there are things we haven't even considered that unless you have the experience, you would know what that is. But I have a specific agenda. I have a specific dream. And that's why I'm pushing our community so hard, because I do believe that we can do that. I honestly believe that we can get really good at it. And we've measured telomeres. I mean, we now know that 60 days of meditation, you can lengthen your telomeres. Our study shows 74% of the people that participated in the study had a lengthening in their telomeres. Now, what's the significance of that? Well, if you lengthen your telomeres, you're lengthening your life. So you're changing a person's future, their genetic destiny, by doing that. So maybe people don't die in suffering. Maybe they don't die of a hardship and diseases. Maybe they just make a choice. It's time to lay their body down and go on. But I'm very hopeful that this becomes more of a skill for all of us, and that we make a difference. We become a species of human beings connected to the earth that's so innovative, so creative, so overjoyful, so we no longer see separation or prejudice or diversity. We see where we're all connected, and that we take care of one another. And we do the right thing, and that we're open to information and greater intelligence, and how big this universe is, and where we could be because of it. So,
and yet this is also one of the most challenging times because of technology and the internet itself that helps actually, produce your ideas and get them out there, is battling us to focus on what he said and she said, and the politics and the minutia, and to look at ourselves in the mirror and to worry. I mean, it's almost an uphill battle now because of that.
Yeah, and I think people are like, I don't know, I've never been on my own Facebook page, but I mean, I think people are starting to figure things out, like people are seeing the hidden meaning behind all of that. It's superficial.
Right.
Whether it's Instagram or whatever that is, news or Facebook. I mean, there's no substance to that any longer. And when you start creating brain coherence and heart coherence, that kind of multitasking and shifting your attention span, I think that becomes disruptive in that narrow focus that we have on a device, and what it does to our brain chemistry when we do something and dopamine levels are released. You start realizing, if you're the slightest bit conscious, that you're so dependent on that. So, I mean, throw your phone down and don't bring it to dinner. Imagine that. Put your phone in another room, and when you do text, go to the room and leave your phone in the room and do your text in the room instead of mindlessly doing that. Start making decisions that you have an hour where there's no technology and you're out in nature, and instead of doing this, you're doing this. You're opening your awareness and focus. It has a measurable effect on the brain. So people, I think, are going to start figuring out the technological limits that we have. Not to say that technology is bad. I mean, I use technology also. You can't function really without technology well. But there's a time and place for everything. And if an addiction is something you think you can't stop, and that's running your world, then you're in a little bit of trouble. And that's my concern. And I spent some time with the teenagers talking about what technology does to the brain, and they figured it out. So just a little self-discipline around it, and using it in a balanced and healthy way, I think, is good. My kids all have technology. But when they grew up, they also had to do something in nature, whether they surfed or sailed or rock climbed or whatever it was. They just had to get out in nature, so that they just laid that down and became less interested in it because they were engaged in the world. And there's nothing to me more disappointing than to see a family out to dinner and everybody's on their cell phone or on their iPads, and they're sitting there like, why even bother sitting together? Family is and dinners and connection and eating together should be being present and being gratitude and celebrating. That's why it's part of being human. So I just think we have to just go back to some of the basics around that, but use technology in a wiser way.
I think deep down we know that these things aren't helping us, and that they provide a lot of anxiety in our lives. At the same time, they're greatest designer drugs in the world.
Sure.
They beat crack and heroin and all that stuff hands down now.
Yeah.
They're so good at variable reward and the dopamine receptors and the buzzing and the this and that. So
your pleasure centers just get hijacked to such a high level that in the absence of that stimulation, you can't find pleasure in anything. Now, a sunset or going to see your grandma or walking your dog, you just had a flurry of stimulation, and your brain's pleasure centers you're kidnapped to a certain level by that. And so then the anhedonia, the lack of joy or pleasure from anything, it means that you can't turn your brain on unless you get back up to that level of stimulation. That's trouble for young children, because learning, number one, should be a reward in and of itself. And number two, when that person is feeling some type of emotion in their life that's disturbing, the answer is not video gaming or getting on your device to try to make the feeling go away, because you're sublimating the problem. You're never addressing it. And so I'm concerned that people have a false sense of reality that do that too much.
Yeah, you mentioned nature a few times, and I know, in Cancun you hit the beach, when your workshops and things like that. But is that something you think about a lot? Our planet, our relationship with our planet, making sure we maintain that relationship with Gaia. I mean, it's something that naturally comes up in ayahuasca ceremonies and things for me. So,
well, I think that when we are truly present with ourselves and with our environment, you begin to realize how disconnected human beings are from nature. And you start studying indigenous tribes anywhere in the world, and you see how they kind of have a beat and a rhythm with nature and how they respect the earth. And for me personally, I think being connected to it, and it's so simple, growing some vegetables, so simple, drinking water out of the earth, and having time to look at the night sky and going off and watching the meteor showers that happen to be at a certain time. I mean, those are the things you remember more than who texted you and when. Those are the things that you take away with you. And we did an event in Costa Rica last year, and I knew the meteor showers were coming that week, and we sat on that beach till the sun came up. And we just laid back, and there was just a shower of meteors the whole night, and everybody was just talking and laughing and just being kids and laying on the earth, and everybody was happy, nobody was saying, oh, I'm tired. It was a show, so if we don't make time, I think, for nature, or if we don't make time for the reverence of nature, I think we miss out on a bigger opportunity. So I think we just have to get back to nature a little bit more, be more connected to it, and I think Mother Nature's a little bit miffed. I think she's going to go through her own growing pains, and there's a lot happening. I mean, it's just a crazy time. Yeah.
Miffed, and she's going to let us know about it.
I think she will. Yeah, I think she's letting us know that she's uncomfortable already.
Yeah, I think you're damn right. Joe, just want to end with some thoughts with people that they've been listening. They know what you're saying is right, and they know they're probably vibrating at a frequency that's just kind of low, not where they want to be. They're reacting. I think you said before, we have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day, 90% of them the same as the day before. They don't know how to break out. They're probably going to tune in for the pineal meditation. They might hit one of your events in the future, but what if they want to just try to take some action now? What do you tell people if a way maybe they can even peek through to the other side and say, wow, maybe this stuff is closer than I think it is, and that I can implement it today? What do you tell people to do?
Look, this is really not hard. I mean, everybody that's listening or participating in this little live broadcast has done something great in their life. Everybody's done it. And when you make up your mind to be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past, all you have to do is make a decision just with a level of intensity that has such a strong amplitude of energy that in that moment your body begins to respond to your mind. In other words, the choice that you make becomes a decision that you never forget. It becomes an experience. And the stronger you have that emotion, the more you are going to pay attention to what you're focusing on in your mind. And now you're beginning to remember your future.
These success secrets are only available on the London Real Academy. Become a member and get access to live shows, exclusive courses, my webinars, bonus content, meetups, live events, an amazing community, and much, much more. Now back to the rest of the show.
And the worst thing that could happen to you after all of this is that you'd get happy. So happy that you probably no longer want anything any longer. And that's when the magic happens every time.
So be proactive, and it's hard work, and make it happen.
Yeah, it's hard work in the beginning because the hardest part about change is not making the same choice, right? So the moment you decide to do something differently, most people feel uncomfortable. They can't predict. They can't, they're in the unknown. So most people will run back to their guilt and say, oh, this feels so much better because at least I feel like myself again. And so they would rather cling to those emotions or those habits than take a chance and possibility. Get in the unknown, and instead of being afraid of it, say, I'm going to change my state, and I'm going to wait instead of going to get something. I want to see if I can draw it to me. And when you start seeing the coincidences and the weird things happening that are coming out of nowhere, I guarantee you, you're going to look at your entire past and you're going to say, I don't want to change anything because it brought me to this moment. And that's the moment the past is over. And so people only talk about their past and complain about their life when they're feeling the emotions that keep them connected to the past. And that's when they go back, I feel this emotion, and they go right back to some event 25 years ago. But if you're not feeling that emotion, then you're not connected to your past any longer. So yeah, this is not positive thinking. This isn't pop psychology. This is changing your state of being and being the scientist really in your life. That's the cool part. Everybody can do this. Be the scientist in your life. Just change your energy and see what kind of crazy things happen. And then when it starts to happen, do it again and create a little bit more. And people are doing it. So it's not a function of some special group of people or chosen people. That's just old beliefs. It's everybody can do this, and just make a little time, just a little time for yourself to just say, no, I can't. No, I'll start tomorrow's. No, this is too hard. No choices of doing this, no complaining, no blaming, no making excuses, no feeling sorry for myself, no judging myself or judging others. This is what I'm changing about myself. And you got to keep it on your conscious mind enough that you are aware of that old self. And when you're so aware of it that you're no longer it, you belong to your future instead of your past.
As usual, Joe, amazing to have you here. You always get me thinking about my own stuff and my own routines and like what I need to go ahead and put back into this world, and how I need to change my game. And your events just sound amazing. I think I'm going to have to come see you.
You're invited.
Thank you very
You're
much.
invited.
As I know you're in Brighton in November, you might see me down there.
I'll make it easy for you.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And looking forward to this pineal gland stuff. You know, I'm fresh off of this ceremony, and so when you describe all these things happening, I just had a smaller version, I guess, happen to me, and so I know how powerful that stuff is. So
Yeah,
and
it's
I
our
know-
birthright.
Yeah.
We are not linear beings trapped to this dimension. We are way bigger than this. I mean, we are way bigger than this. We're just compressed into this. And when people get outside of it, they get a taste of that. They can't. Once you see, you can't not see. That's the way it is.
Right, and that's what you show people. Yeah. Joe, I love how excited you are that you're in the middle of this. And I love how you're always improving and you're even critical of yourself and you're like, look, we got more work to do, we got more things to do. And I think it shows the fact that you're really in the moment and you're creating, and it's really genuine. So I really appreciate you for everything you're doing. You were here 5 months ago, it feels like you've already transformed. And so I'm looking forward to more of what you're doing in the future. I can't wait to attend one of these events and feel this whole vibe and energy and see what's happening. Because like you said, when you see it happening, there's no way of denying it. It probably opens your mind up to all the possibilities within yourself.
And being a part of it.
Right. Yeah,
That's
that
the cool
too.
part.
So keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you in November. Thanks for dropping this insight on us. And as we say about London Real, it's about the journey. And I expect to see you back here fairly soon.
Okay,
All right,
excellent.
thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Frank.
The critics who always speak behind my back, maybe I want to hear them remind me, he's back, the great pretender. I hope this time he gets hurt. I love these guys. They give me fuel. If you want to reach your objective, you want to achieve it, you're going to have to be obsessive. You're going to have to be obsessed. Feel what you do. Feel it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't matter.
It's Chris Eubank Jr. How do you explain his prowess in the ring?
Junior has that obsession, that genius, that magic. Genius is obsession, but it's in one area.
You studied the sweet science for so much of your life. How do you walk away from it? Do you miss it?
You can't walk away from it. I am it. And even when I dance, really I'm boxing. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, the one who strives valiantly.
What was the worst day of your life, and how has it shaped you as a human being?
When I fought Nigel Benn, I stood like this. It was to mask this. The risk must be taken. That's why you are London Reelers. That's why we're here. We're tired of sitting still, watching it happening for others. Let's do it.